why am I protected? Why did I become the richest black man of all time? Like, how did that happen?
This is Mutabaruka. We want to present to you a wholesome kind of level of consciousness right now. So subscribe and tell your friend them. This is Mutabaruka.
So the ultimate service position is leader of the free world, to be the president of the United States. We get too caught up in the past and what everyone's saying and what everyone's tweeting. And sometimes you just have to be fearless enough to break the simulation. What they do, what schools are doing is exactly what the CIA does with Pixar films and Disney films.
Kanye West boldly proclaims that the ultimate service lies in leading the free world, aspiring to the presidency of the United States.
It's funny, you know, in this world that we live in, there's two main motivating forces, and I tweet about it all the time. It's love or fear. And you can't explain love. You know, my cousin is locked up, and I love him. And so he did a bad thing, but I still love him.
Reflecting on societal battles, West acknowledges the futility of challenging entrenched indoctrination and media conglomerates.
The Disney guys, you know, you might not believe in God, but God believes in you. It's not a battle you can win. It's like, don't jump, Anakin, I have the higher ground kind of situation. So you could put out all of the indoctrinations and, you know, moves and have the biggest media company, but why am I alive? It's difficult to make me unhappy. Now I can deal with frustrations, but when those frustrations are, it's like when you've allowed people to be in your life that shouldn't be there, and then they do the thing you knew they were going to do, and you're screaming at them, but you really need to scream at yourself. I thought it was good. I thought it's what I was supposed to do at that time. Yes. You know, if I see something, I see an opportunity, I'm going to go for it. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? We only, you know, we're all going to die one day.
Yeah, it's true.
So we live like that. Live like you could die tomorrow. You know, go for it. You know, those steps would have allowed that. Those steps have been the, you know, the platforms that allowed me to make it this far.
West reveals the personal cost of expressing support for Trump, facing ostracism within the black community for diverging from monolithic thought.
And just as a musician, African-American, guy out in Hollywood, all these different things, you know, everyone around me tried to pick my candidate for me. Mm-hmm. And then told me every time I said I like Trump that I couldn't say it out loud, or my career would be over. I get kicked out the black community because blacks we're supposed to have a monolithic thought. We can only be Democrats and all. So even when I said it right before I went to the hospital and I expressed myself, and when I came out, I had lost my confidence. So I didn't have the confidence to take on the world and the possible backlash. And it took me a year and a half to have the confidence to stand up and put on the hat, no matter what the consequences were. And what it represented to me is not about policies, and because I'm not a politician like that, but it represented overcoming fear and doing what you felt, no matter what anyone said, and saying, you can't bully me. Liberals can't bully me, news can't bully me, the hip hop community, they can't bully me. Because at that point, if I'm afraid to be me, I'm no longer Ye. That's what makes Ye. And I actually quite enjoy when people actually are mad at me about certain things.
You must enjoy it.
Yeah. I actually quite enjoy it.
Because your wife was mad at you, right? I mean, according to your song, your wife was upset about that.
Right or wrong, or even if I changed my mind about it or thought about it more, which I'm not saying I did, just place a thought out there that everyone's not thinking sometimes.
Embracing his faith, West asserts that aligning with God will lead to divine favor and success.
Why am I protected? Why did I become the richest black man of all time? Like, how did that happen? And the more and more I lean into God and work for God, the more wins God is going to bestow on our team, on Jesus Gang. And for me to go out and just state an obvious and empathetic statement in the middle of the most liberal central like to go. That was like Tiananmen Square or something. I was like with Candace Owens, and we both wore the shirt at the same time. You know, we got some Jesus soldiers out here, and people say they're willing to for it, but we live for it. We're living for the battle. And what's the battle for? Life itself. Our children. They're killing us through the food. They're killing us through the content. They're killing us through the programming. But God is alive, and He's alive in all of us, and we will overcome.
West exposes the manipulation of Black trauma for political gain, condemning the exploitation of suffering for electoral victories.
Soros would use Black trauma economy to win an election. And what I love is having a healthy conversation. And as opposed to, there's certain things, you know, boom, this drops, people gonna have hats on. Boom, this drops, it's gonna be, you know, Black people and white people with signs. Boom, this drops. So, hey, China, hey, left agenda, hey, what we're gonna do is say that our species can have a healthy conversation.
With unwavering resolve, West welcomes challenges as opportunities for growth and problem solving.
And the whole thing, the comparison to this church to me going and saying, okay, why am I running for president, is to be in service. And that service to my own ego. You know, I feel like God says to me, like, haven't I given you enough? And I gave you an ego that helped you overcome all these, you know, roadblocks and smoke screens and people telling you what you can't do. Now you need to realize when you're doing things for your ego and when you're doing things for me, this is like God, what I feel God is saying to me. Because it really irritates me when people say, God told me to tell you. So I'm very like mindful with this kind of wording. I'm saying I have a feeling that that's what God is saying for me to be in service. So the ultimate service position is leader of the free world, to be the president of the United States. It's sometimes you see me on Twitter, I say, I want all the smoke. I want all the problems, because the problems are the opportunities. There's an opportunity to solve things. And Kurzweil, he created the keyboard Kurzweil. He has this video that Mark Romanek, this director that shot 99 Problems for Jay-Z, which is like my favorite, maybe like top 5 or top 2 favorite videos of all time. He also did Closer for Trent Reznor, and I just grew up on MTV in the 90s, and I love Mark Romanek videos. But he would share, he'd share little bits and pieces. And I remember Ray Kurzweil talking about the ability for us to have a utopia, but us being led by the least noble and the most greedy.
West challenges societal norms, advocating for fearlessness in breaking free from traditional constraints to advance as a collective.
I think people focus too much on the past and focus too much on regret. Even like when you deal with schools, like you take like the idea. My point is, I've heard of history class. I've never heard of a class that breaks down how you balance a checkbook or how you control your finances, which my father never taught me that. And I've never heard of a future class. So they keep us so focused on history that we start to believe that it actually repeats itself. And we become overly traditional, and we can't advance as a race of beings. We get too caught up in the past and what everyone's saying and what everyone's tweeting. And sometimes you just have to be fearless enough to break the simulation. And when I mean simulation, this is what I mean by the simulation. Sorry, I know you guys wanted to clap, but everything I'm gonna say is gonna be amazing.
Critiquing historical narratives, West highlights the erasure of African greatness, lamenting the portrayal of Africans primarily as servants.
What they do, what schools are doing, is exactly what the CIA does with Pixar films and Disney films. They make Bambi's mom in the beginning, right? And off that pain comes a purchase of ice cream. Off that pain comes, I need some more toys. Off that pain comes, I need a bigger house. Off that pain comes, I need more girls than my wife. Off that pain comes, so they put that pain in to make us, now we're the orphans of capitalism, to make us be consumers. And we need to be a community, not just consumers. So I could have went another 7 minutes by being a person who presents himself in a way that says, well, I don't have to feel your pain because I also have pain too that's not being recognized. And in every interview, when I say, well, why did I get to the point of putting up the tweet? No one wants to understand why I got to that point, right?
You had pain.
Yeah, but no one.
Pain in your heart.
But let's say this: undoubtedly, Jewish people have a lot of movies about that pain, and Black people have a lot of movies about the pain of. Right? It's almost impossible to find a movie about Mansa Musa. When you go to the African History Museum in Washington, D.C., it doesn't start with the idea of Africans being kings. It starts with the idea of Africans being...
West pays homage to Michael Jackson for breaking down racial barriers in the music industry, paving the way for artists like himself.
Yeah, it's just the way I was consuming information in my life at that time, you know, information from, you know, whatever, negative information or positive information from the internet. Me, you know, just going to the Louvre, you know, and going to furniture exhibits and understanding that, trying to open up and do interviews with this, learning more about architecture, taking 1,000 meetings, attempting to get like backing to do clothing and different things like that, and like getting no headway whatsoever, you know, because, you know, and it was just that level of frustration. And that's what, you know, this is what frustration fucking sounds like. Yeah. This is what frustration sounds like. Like for me as Kanye West, I would not be Kanye West if it wasn't for Michael Jackson. I was with Quincy Jones a couple of days ago at John Legend's wedding. Quincy was telling me it wasn't just Mike, but these guys broke down, you know, the barriers. You know, of course, you know, like Michael Jackson, like he had to fight to get his video played because he was Black. This is Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson's not even Black. He's Michael Jackson. You know what I mean? It's like you know, like saying he's so crazy, like how can he even be just classified as like, you know, this Black artist? So for me, you know, in my life and creativity, it's been challenging. Yeah, it's been challenging and everything, but I was able to ascend to massive levels of heights and never stop, right? Because of the foundation that my mother and my father and my grandfather laid through civil rights, what Michael Jackson did with music videos and the ground he broke. There would be no Kanye West if it wasn't for Michael Jackson.
Delving into existential musings, West shares insights into the concept of living in a simulation, probing the nature of reality and existence.
Someone, or when someone gets in a position of leadership that is in service to God and in service to people, period, but immediately the American people, I had this joke I was saying, like, man, no one outside of our country should be able to see these debates. This is family business right here. This is only for America to see. We can't let anyone outside the country see it. But to be in service. So I stepped away already from my rap career for a year and served God every week, sometimes twice a week, 3 times a week, never missed a Sunday until, and this is the thing, there were people inside of the church stealing, doing different things, trying to just take them, and God still provided a way for us to keep that boat afloat. We never missed a service. And then one of my pastors, Pastor Adam, who is the way he preaches is called expository. It's like 1-to-1 by the word. Here's the idea why you're in a simulation. Let's start with acting, first of all. And a 2-year-old screams at a restaurant, the entire restaurant screams, teach that kid how to act. We're all unpaid actors in some giant script that we didn't write. Simulation, a 2-year-old jumps on a coffee table and someone says, that's a coffee table, don't jump on that. So it went from being something that makes him feel like Superman, he's got his cape on, to something where he has to think about this person's like a family member he doesn't like anyway. He's 2 years old, he doesn't give a about a coffee or a table. And he's starting to like calculate all these things. And by the time you're 40 years old, you've got a wall full of coffee tables calculating you into traffic, calculating you into your career choice, calculating you into this townhouse that's not quite as big as the townhouse next, and it just never works. You know, that's the simulation that I'm talking. That's what I mean when I say simulation. I'm disagreeing that we need to harp on the things that happen, because the truth is, I'm giving a fact, 50% today of
let's say you don't call black people Jew, right? Black people today is abortion today, right now. Like that, it's not racism. That's too wide of a term. It's and population control that black people are in today in America that is promoted by the music and the media that black people make, that Jewish record labels get paid off of, or media companies. Record labels and media company also, so let's give it a wider. Well, I've reached a point in my life where my Truman Show boat has hit the painting, and I've got to a point that Michael Jackson did not break down. I have reached the glass ceiling. As a creative person, as a celebrity. When I say that, it means I want to do product. I am a product person, not just clothing, but water bottle design, architecture, everything, that you could, think about. And I've been at it for 10 years. And I look around, I say, wait a second, there's no one around here in this space that looks like me. And if they are, they're quiet as. So that means, wait a second, now we're seriously like in a civil rights movement. Mm-hmm. Like people used to joke about, do you remember our South Park photo?
Yeah, I do.
Remember how funny that was? Do you think there would be a Givenchy in the hood if it wasn't for that South Park photo?
Yeah.
But no one thinks about that. No one thinks about the names I got called for like wearing tight jeans. Mm. This person, I'm gonna listen to the kids, bro. I'm gonna listen to my daughter. I'm gonna listen to kids before I listen to super programmed out adults. And especially if that adult hasn't done something that I am looking to do. Right. So it's so funny how people are so like free and almost arrogant with their advice. And I'm just like, why would I listen to you? That was the first one. I was inspired after seeing this Alexander McQueen film, because this is a beautiful, amazing artist that himself, and he always would talk about it. He even designed his own casket, and I've thought of like casket design. I thought about a tombstone that said, "Are you happy now?" Mm. So
it's funny, but not funny really though, because it's when you have thoughts like that, you have to be careful and talk to people.
Yeah, but you have to be careful and, well, not be careful, just be expressive and understand that all these people are sensitive people. Like you get these celebrities and they get a bad photo, and everyone just tears them all the way to shreds, and you forget that this is a daughter, a son, a mom, a dad. And I think I fight for all of us. They created, there was a Jewish trainer that brought me to the hospital and put in press that I went to the hospital. I know friends that off of exhaustion, a Jewish doctor, they
Why do you keep saying Jewish?
Because they were, right? Diagnosed me with bipolar disorder and me with medication and put me on medication, then put it in the press. And every time, even if I wore the wrong color hat that it's not supposed to wear, right? Then they immediately say he's off of it. He's off his meds, he's off his rocker, and it's literally used as a scarlet letter control mechanism for the people. Understand, the kids, the colleges, the high schools, what do you think they put me right now? They put me as the prophet, not the leader. It doesn't have to be the leader, right? Because we need a more intelligent person to be the leader, but at least, right? They put me as the prophet. They put me as the only person that would say this. And I'm just saying that was 4 Jewish members that controlled my voice, because for the fact that 90% of Black people in entertainment, from sports to music to acting, are in some way tied into Jewish business people. There's some nice ones here and there, some good here and there, but we culture. Rap the new rock and roll. We culture. Rap is the new rock and roll. We the rock stars.
It's been like that now for a minute.
It's been like that for a minute, Hedy Slimane. It's been like that for a minute. And we the real rock stars, and I'm the biggest of all of them. Wow. I'm the #1 rock star on the planet. So he said my son wants to hear a rap album from Ye. And that was the paradigm shift for me. I use that word a lot. I like that. I like paradigm shift. It's one of my favorite words. And I made this rap album, and for a lot of people, it was the first album that they could play with a certain production level in the house with their family. Now, you know, you could argue if the Watch the Throne production was stronger or better than Jesus is King production, but when I go and I've been working with Dr. Dre, and some of the beats would just be like, you know, the hardest beats possible. And it's something that was very spiritual and meditative about the mix on Jesus is King, that it wasn't hitting as hard as Jesus or hitting as hard as Watch the Throne. It was like, this is how God wanted me to make this sonic painting and the way he wanted me to communicate. Then so we did that album, and then we did the Jesus is Born album, which also I got that idea from Pastor Adams. And I mean, there's people who that's the only album they play, and it's just bringing these gospel. And I tell you, like, my formula for these hymns I'm writing, because I'm writing the songs that we're doing at Sunday service is basically my book of hymns for the future gospel university.
You guys don't understand that I've met with companies and they say, what we're trying to figure out is how we can control you and control that. If you're an architect, if you're a world builder, if you have all these ideas and you're Gaudi and you want to build buildings, if you don't ever get that out, what's going to happen?
Isn't that why you do it? Isn't it the process? Isn't it the point?
Y'all don't think
to
you're
do
really
it?
hearing what I'm saying.
But I'm trying to.
As a creative,
Yeah.
for you to have done something to the level of the Yeezys and not be able to create more. And you cannot create that on your own with no support, with no backing. So when I say clean water was only served to the fairer skin, what I'm saying is we're making product with chitlins, t-shirts. That's the most we can make, t-shirts. We can have our best perspective on t-shirts. But if it's anything else, your Truman Show boat is hitting the wall. And what's more important to me about this than everything that I could do sonically and everything is, if I go somewhere and someone says, hey, we don't like Kanye West, you've heard that before, right? What people don't realize is I want to make uniforms for my high school basketball team through brand Yeezy. I want to make that one step and then make another step and then eventually do uniforms for the entire city. Then I want those uniforms to be hot and make money then I eventually want to be the anchor and the force behind a $1 billion company. And after I made that $1 billion step, then I can go in and say, hey, I've got an opinion on this. And that could be a $10 billion step. And I eventually want to be the anchor of the first $1 trillion company.
What Da Vinci tried to do at 80, I did at 6 years old because I had been working on it perhaps from a past life. Now, I'm not trying to say I'm crazy or this reincarnation or anything, but we know that energy does not die. Energy just reboots itself and reboots itself. So we are eternal. So stop panicking, thinking your life is over. You've done this trillions of times.
Amidst the flickering candlelight, Terrence Howard's confessions pierced the darkness, unraveling a tapestry of secrets that had remained hidden for generations.
But my question actually has to do with your numbers theory. So if by your logic you say 1 times 1 equals 2, are you insinuating that 1 times 0 then equals 1?
Equals 1. Well, that's what we were saying with the identity principle. The identity property, it says that 1 times nothing equals nothing. Something, so now you have, the laws of physics have to now adjust because something just disappeared. Conservation of energy, energy can't be created or destroyed. So if 1 times 0 equals 0, then what happened to the energy of the 1? Isn't that the same problem that Stephen Hawking was talking about with the event horizon and the information going in and still being present, that conflict that was started? Well, that's because of the math. The principles in the math are not founded on truth. It's not founded on substance. The identity principle, anything times 0 is 0 and anything times 1 is 1. Where is that number? Where is that exemplified in nature or in universal phenomena? Is it? Do you see that?
So then, are you saying that 1 times 5 would be 6?
Yes. Well, what does it say in the associative and commutative thing?
So you're
if A and B
proposing-
are positive integers, it says if A and B are positive integers, A is to be added to itself as many times as is indicated by units in B.
So you're not proposing an audit, you're proposing like a
Well, I'm not the first one
reconstruction
to
of
say
the way
we
we
need to do
understand
this.
math.
You know what's interesting? In 1856, a man from Liverpool named Richard Dover Statter challenged the Dewey Decimal System and said that it was wrong, and created an entirely new system to show how it can be brought into correction. So I'm not the first person to say this. That's a number of people did it, but look up Richard Dover Statter. Try and find him. You won't find him because he's been erased from history almost.
Your view on consciousness and energy sounds very similar to what Dr. Robert Lanza proposes in biocentrism, so that may be of interest to you if you haven't read that text. But about 5 years ago, you spoke about harmonic wave sequencing and how that could
Harmonic wave resequencing.
And how that could possibly solve cancer or genetic ailments within the next 5 years. I think that was about 5 years ago. So is there much progress on that? And how do you propose that this resequencing would actually recode people's genetics in order to prevent them from getting these ailments?
Simple. Our DNA is made up of what? 5 elements, right? Hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, and oxygen. Do you know how they're arranged? The phosphorus sits right here in the middle, and you've got 4 oxygen atoms surrounding it. Then there's another phosphorus, 2 more oxygen atoms. Now these are the legs of that double helix. These are the legs. Now the latter steps on it, they become the adenine, the guanine, the cytosine, and thymine, the ATCGs. It turns out hydrogen, they used to think that energy, the body transferred or understood the energy information through electricity. They're finding out it's through frequency. Well, guess what hydrogen sounds like? It's a key of E. Guess what, and it's the color yellow. That's what proper physics gets you to. Oxygen is a chartreuse, and it's the key of F over F sharp. Now they used to, like I said, information used to be thought about as just electrical information passing on. But I got a question for you. Have you ever been at a party with some of your friends you ain't seen in 10 years, but you was like 14, you hung out, and there's a song that came on, and you was like, ah, and everybody got up and was live at that moment. Now say 10 years later you got a friend with you, he's a good guy, but he wasn't there when me and my boys formed this. So when that song comes on, our DNA tightens. There's a particular song, a scale in the genomes for each and every one of us. Now when that song is played, when your particular prime resonant frequency is played, guess what happens? Your DNA celebrates and tightens. Everything else gets pushed out. Harmonic wave resequencing. The carbon is also the key of E and yellow. Nitrogen is G. And all these play a song. So say that the F over F sharps of the oxygen, the green, is only hitting at an F. Why? Because there's another frequency coming in from a generator over there. That's changing and causing it to change. So this F now hits the oxygen. And when it hits, when the F hits the carbon, so instead of hitting as an F sharp, it hits as an F, so when it hits the carbon at an E, it doesn't hit it quite right, so the domino don't file right. So the next domino hits wrong. And so now we have malformation happening within our DNA because the frequencies are being pushed off. But when we hear our tone, we tighten back up. So yeah, I'm in the process of building the harmonic wave resequencer with another doctor who has been able to successfully cure AIDS and cancer. And it's well underway. But I wanted you guys to understand how that works. It's so simple. You do not need to tear the human body apart when all you can do is use frequency to bring it back to its normal space.
In the dim glow of midnight, Terrence Howard descended from the shadows, bearing secrets that could shatter reality itself.
Do you think that the reason that we have like economic crises, for example, is because we are not understanding our numbers correctly according to your theory?
Well, I think we have an economic problem because we are the only creatures in this universe that use currency. There are no other creatures that use currency in order to exist. Why is it that we chose this strange thing that isn't even real? Other creatures, they drink water, they eat fruit, they eat other animals. We exchange with currency, and our system of exchanging with currency is flawed because of greed. There's not like if 1 times 1 equals 2, we've got an equilibrium of balance. 1 times 1 equals 1, you've got loss. When 1 times 1 equals 3 or more, you're talking about over unity and supersymmetry. And that's how you get the universe to work for you. Instead of using just the solar voltaics off of it, you also use the piezoelectric effects of it. You use other things to make greater unity. But 1 times 1 equaling 1, when it could also equal a pound times a pound equaling a pound, when it could also equal $4 or $10 or $100, does that make sense to you? Do you think the banks are abusing that? What's a quarter times a quarter? If I ask anybody in this room, what's a quarter times a quarter? That's 25 times 25. The computer will the calculator will tell you 6.25 cents. But we know 25 pence times 25 pence is 625 pence. That's 6 pounds and 25 pence, but the computer or the banks only have to give you 6.25 cents reference for it. Or let's say you put a dime times a dime. Go ahead, let me get this out. Say you take a dime times a dime. You put that in your calculator, it says 1 cent. 0.10 times 0.10 is 1 cent. But we know a dime times a dime is a whole dollar. But the banks gives us money based on that evaluation. Is that fair? And I might get shot about talking about this right now, but I've got a book coming out called Does $1 times $1 equal $1, or Does $1 times $1 equal $2? And in the process, not only do I explain the death of the Platonic solids, but I also introduce the new Terran wave conjugations that replace this Euclidean way of life and gives us a three-dimensional way of seeing the world.
The moonlit alley echoed with the weight of Terrence Howard's revelation, a clandestine truth that had remained veiled in the recesses of his enigmatic mind.
That's what I'm saying. Do you want to see the world in 2D or do you want to see it in 3D? Because our math right now is 2D. Our math is black and white and stick figures. I want the world in multicolor spectral vision.
So you're saying 1 pound times 1 pound is equal to 2 pounds. But it's 1 pound squared, which doesn't make any sense because you've got a squared unit.
Squared. 1 pound squared.
Can you divide pounds? Can you divide money? If you can divide it, you can multiply it. All these things that I showed you guys, I've patented all these things. You know why I patented them? Because in 1926, a man named Walter Russell wrote a book called The Universal One, and in it he introduced an entirely new periodic table. And there he introduced the 2 heavy water elements, and then plutonium and deuterium. Both of those, all 4 of those elements that had never been discovered, he sent out to 800 different universities in his book. 2 years later, he watched as other people came and got Nobel Prizes for his work. Why? Because he didn't patent it. He didn't copyright it. So I copywrote all these things and patented all these things before bringing them to you. They are true, and I think there's some value to them. The money there's nothing wrong with the money, but how we deal with the money. But if you can divide money, you can multiply it. It works hand in hand. Or you can't see that. You can't see dividing money.
Well, it's a matter of definition. If you define, it's a matter of definition. A pound squared is not a unit defined.
A pound squared.
If you multiply by mathematical convention, if you multiply 1 pound by 1 pound, same as if you multiply 1 meter by 1 meter, it should be 1 pound squared or 1 square meter.
It becomes 2. Why does it become 1 pound squared is 2, isn't it? Now, if you look at remember what I just said about the associative and the commutative laws. It says A is to be added to itself as many times as its units in B. And the only thing that prevents that is the identity element that sits up and says, no, the Jim Crow law sits. Black people sit in the back of the bus because that's what the law says, without even having a foundation for it. 1 times any number is that number without a foundation, with no principle. It just says it.
But if you go by your logic and you say 1 times 1 is 2, 1 times 2 is 3, and then how would you define 2 times 4? Is that
stays? All that remains the same. Anything with 1, just add 1. The first rule of
okay, then where's the difference between addition and multiplication?
Well, multiplication is what? Exaggerated addition. Isn't it?
But isn't it a matter of mathematical convention?
What is?
If it was defined in the beginning, it could have been defined differently, but logical, it makes the most sense. Sorry. Is it a matter of mathematical convention? If you define beforehand that something, logically, it makes the most sense that 1 times 1, if you have 1 laptop, 1 times a laptop is 1 laptop, That makes more sense than you say it's 2 laptops.
Well, now if you say...
And then that's where the mathematical convention comes in. And that's like most, like large part of math is convention. It's how it has been defined. It's a matter of definition.
And it's wonderful. The convention is all right if the material and the information being shared in the convention is true. But when you're talking about dogma being added in, with that thing that I showed you, did you look at the square root of 2? Do you think that that's a loop? That's a natural thing with the square root of 2? Did you believe that?
Pi, that's like not mathematical.
No, it's not the same. No, it's not the same with pi. What we just did, we multiplied it, we cubed the number, and then we divided it by 2, and we cubed it again and divided it by 2, and we did that a number of times, and that number still remained the same exact number, which we know cannot happen.
As the city slept, Terrence Howard unveiled a cryptic journal, each page etched with the forbidden knowledge that could rewrite the destiny of nations.
It's right there, and that's what they say is the difference between, that's what they say allows 1 times 1 to equal 1, because 1, 1.414213562373095 ... is the square root of 2. But we know that that's not the case. I tried to do it 80. I did it 6 years old because I had been working on it perhaps from a past life. We know that energy does not die. Energy just reboots itself and reboots itself. So we are eternal.
As the moon cast an enigmatic glow over the city, Terrence Howard emerged from the shadows, ready to unveil a trove of hidden knowledge that could reshape destinies.
If you lose that little spark that kept you motivated, that little piece, like this is my vocation. I love acting half the time, but there's some downfalls of it. A lot of actors end up with personality identity crisis and conflicts because you have so many characters you're playing. And if you really commit to the characters, you become like a piece of clothing. And your body becomes what they put on. And the character has a tendency of wanting to own you. They don't let go. What you saw in Anthony Hopkins and Hannibal Lecter, that monster lives in him. That's why we believed it. He had to tap into something very ugly in our human nature sometimes. And as an actor, sometimes I tap into beautiful things. But like with Lucius, and the character I play with Lucius, his life is filled with turmoil. So 90% of the day I'm walking around carrying his turmoil and also the turmoil from me and my own family. And then how do you have time to really bring yourself back to who you are? Because that's the most important thing. That's the thing that's going to bother you more than anything else. You will look at yourself one day and you won't know who you are because you don't remember who you were. Sometime along the way, or maybe at 13 or 14, we let go of the little person that kept us going. That little person that was always there, I got you, man. I'm here, I got you. Don't go in there, I ain't going in there. That person, when we get about 13 or 14, we get embarrassed of him. And we push him aside and we don't listen to him anymore. And he's always knocking. Hey, hey. And after so long of a time, maybe 10, 15 years, you don't even know him. You show up at your own door and you don't even know who you are. Your family doesn't know who you are. So it's important, no matter what you do, no matter what challenges you go through, you remember who you are.
The air crackled with tension as Terrence Howard stepped onto the stage, a man burdened with untold truths, about to shatter the illusions that had blinded the world.
Now, this is one of the oldest symbols in human history, right? Or do you not know? This symbol was found in the Temple of Osiris in Egypt, and it had been molecularly burned into the wall. And it's 6,000 years old. The same symbol has been found in the forbidden temples in China, sitting under the fufu dogs. And the foot on it, the flower of life, saying whoever controlled that flower of life controlled the universe. There were secrets in that flower of life that Da Vinci spent his whole life trying to uncover. There were secrets in that flower of life that Newton spent his whole life in secret trying to uncover. The same secrets that Pythagoras was desperately trying to uncover. But the problem was, they kept seeing this in a two-dimensional space. They couldn't get it out of this two-dimensional frame, and as a result, they got stuck in this plane, a flat plane. Now, what Da Vinci and all of them wanted to do, they were trying to find a way to bring this flower to life, because what is inside of it? Well, apparently, there were secrets inside of it. Shapes, they got the Merkaba and all of those other things out of it. But they were misled by something I think called a straight line. You guys believe in straight lines? You believe there's straight lines in the universe? Well, let me hit you with something. All energy in the universe is expressed in what? It's in motion. If something is still, there's no energy. Kinetic, right? All motion is expressed in what? You look at galaxies, are they expressed in straight lines? Expressed in vortices. All vortices are expressed in what? Waves. All waves are curved. Show me a straight line in nature. You show me where the platonic solids come from. Where do they have their foundations in our universe? Are there any straight lines? If you look at anything, there are no straight lines. That's been the mistake. We've been looking at these straight lines, this Euclidean way of thinking, and missing the curvature of nature.
Beneath the neon lights, Terrence Howard's voice echoed through the silent crowd, each word carrying the weight of a revelation, threatening to dismantle the foundations of reality.
Do you believe in loops? Do you know the square root of 2? Do you think that's a loop? Do you believe that the square root of 2 is the square root of 2? Yes or no? Hands up, no? I want y'all to take out your phone for a minute then. We're gonna do one thing. Everybody got a phone? Put it on the calculator and turn it to the side so you can get all the long numbers out of it, okay? Now I want you to put in 2 and square root it. 2, hit the square root, you'll get 1.414213562373095 ... right? Now I want you guys to do me a favor, cube it. It'll see right over there, it'll be x to the 3. Can y'all do that? Have you cubed it? It'll see 2.8284271 2174 6190. Now that makes sense. I want you guys to do me a favor. Divide it by 2. Get that number? Cube it again. Divide it by 2. Cube it again. And I want you to do that until the end of your lives. And that number will still come up with 2.8284271 2174 6190. Any other number that you, above 2, that you put in and you cube and you cube and square and divide by 2, by the 6th operation, it has moved into an exponential number that you can't even imagine. Any number below 2 that you do that same operation with, it will go into an exponentially small matter and number. This is what we call a loop. It is illogical, it doesn't make sense, and it does not make math make sense. So these are some things that I'm bringing to the fore and that I would like to question. I would like to audit the math, the world of mathematics, and I would like to audit how we view the platonic solids, because I think the new wave conjugations will tell a better story of how our world works.
In a clandestine meeting, Terrence Howard shared clandestine wisdom with a select few, his words a catalyst for a storm of change.
Our planet is moving away from our sun at 6 inches a year. You guys know that. 15 centimeters a year, our planet is pushing away from the sun. So in less than 500 million years, our planet will be out of the Goldilocks zone. We'll be somewhere near where Mars is, somewhere halfway between there. So life will not be able to be sustained on this planet anymore. So if we're going to be able to sustain ourselves as a species, we have to become interstellar. Not just interplanetary, we have to become interstellar. But with approximations, you cannot become interstellar. You cannot become interstellar with a point that will take you all the way over here with a straight line when the actual event is taking place over here. When you're going 600 quadrillion miles, you can't make a mistake. You need precision. And that's what the math is about. These pieces predict the natural distribution of matter and the distribution of where you can find yourself in that space. And I'm confident behind it. For 40 years I've worked on this. And I think it's ready.
So I've sat also at lunch, basically trying to get my head around this, and also I was very, very, very skeptical, and I put my hands up and say that. And one of the things that you mentioned was sort of about how this applies to, I think it was the electric sun model, and that's where it's a theory that suggests that the sun is powered from external forces rather than what is usually nuclear fusion, which is the general consensus among scientists. And the reason for that is because there's not a production there's no evidence to suggest that the byproduct neutrinos are there. And
the neutrinos
what Terrence is trying to prove, I think, is that because the fact that you can't detect whether neutrinos are there or not, there must be another way in which they're powered.
As the room hushed in anticipation, Terrence Howard's lips parted, releasing a cascade of forbidden knowledge that sent shockwaves through the hearts of those who dared to listen.
Don't forget, you know what I didn't want to forget? This flower of life. Because apparently I've been interested in it at a given time. And I came out and I was born. The first thing I thought about when I was 5 years old, I was obsessed with bubbles. I was like, why does a bubble take the shape of a ball? Why not a square or a triangle? And I would go and try and make square or triangular bubbles. And we could never do it because it turns out everything expands as a sphere and everything contracts in geometric form. You drop a pebble into the pond, it expands in a perfect sphere unless there's something in the way. The moment it hits the edge of the shore and starts to come back, it's the contracting waves that hit the expanding waves that creates the initial geometries. Everything expands as a sphere, everything contracts in geometry and fits, basically. So what I'm saying, and what I tried to tell you guys earlier, this is not your first time, it's not your first rodeo, and it won't be your last rodeo. Don't panic in this life. You can actually, there's no sense of death. Everything goes to sleep and it wakes back up again. Refolds and unfolds, refolds and unfolds. And if you're wise, if you're careful, because you can remember conscious moments in your life, can't you? You can remember moments when you're like, wait a minute, I'm in a bigger space than just this little body right here. You become fully aware of everything around you. And if you quiet yourself, you can think about those things. Well, apparently I did that at the last passage, because when I came into this life.
The informative information presented in this video is motivational and is positively aimed at inspiring, educating and entertaining the viewers with the cutting edge of critical reasoning. If you enjoy the contents on the Black Radar YouTube channel, please consider subscribing to show your support.